Welcome to the Winning at Clubroom. My name is Mark Moyer, and I'm excited as all heck to have three incredible people to come join me on the stage here. They are all, I've known all three of them for a while now. Interestingly enough, they're all either from or originally from or in or around Alberta, Canada. I don't know why that happened, but it happened. So I'm going to invite each one of you in right now, and then I'm going to do a quick little brief bio on each. I'm going to start with you, Christina. Christina is fantastic. There she is. What a smiling face. I love it. Canadian bobslayer, which sounds like it should be a some sort of a slasher kind of a movie. She's a bobslayer. But a Canadian Olympian was a first female bobsledder, I'm going to say, in the Olympics, two-woman sled, correct? Did I do that right?
Yeah, for Canada.
Anyway, but throughout the course of her career, a combination of rattling her head down the course 100 times or more, and a bunch of things. She has suffered some TBI and is still suffering from some of the after effects of that. And she's gracious enough to join us today. So thanks for being here, Christina. You're fabulous.
Thank you, Mark. You are too. Well, fabulous knows fabulous.
There you go. I like that. I like that. Curtis, my man, why don't you come on and click on that accept button? Curtis Anderson, I've been watching his story the last couple of years, his chronicle of his recovery, ongoing recovery from his severe traumatic brain injury 20 years ago. And Curtis is going to tell us all about it. And look at that cool hat he's wearing. That's amazing. I love it. And but thanks for being here, Curtis. Sorry, and I'm glad you're not like in your car or somewhere else, but you're actually in front of your laptop. This is awesome.
Thanks for having me here to share my story.
My huge pleasure. And Clint, come on in. I had a chance to meet Clint in person at his ranch in Nevada, and not only is it a beautiful ranch, he's got horses, he's got all kinds of animals, he's got dogs running around. He's running around, but he's just a wonderful guy. Had a long career in the NHL, wrote a fantastic book that is my favorite of a post-athlete career and sort of biography. And he also has had mental health issues, suffered from severe OCD back when he was a child, attempted suicide, all kinds of things, all balled up in one. But he's still a pretty damn good guy. So Clint, come on in.
God, I'm handsome son of a gun. Woo.
Hang on a second. All right.
Hey.
There we go.
Anyways,
Christina,
I can't.
I left it at home. Shoot.
These guys are all real cowboys. I'm just a wannabe. But
we're all Albertans. And Alberta, in case you didn't know, is the concussion capital of the world.
Well, it all starts when you're born and they drop all of you on your heads. What the hell? And it's downhill from there. Oh my God.
I didn't know this was yucks. Like
no, we got to mix a little bit of it in. You know, it's a serious subject, obviously, but let's dive right in though. So before we go much further, I'd love to actually have each of you give maybe a 30-second, a short version of what sort of led to a lot of this, and and your injuries, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about what you're doing to recover from, and what kind of advice you can give others if they go through the same sort of thing. But first, I want to start with Curtis. I'd like to hear if you could tell me a little bit about what you were doing before your injury, and then what was the injury, what led to it.
Well, 2 weeks before my accident, I had a severe concussion. So my brain was already injured to a certain degree. And the 2 hits I took at the Ponoka Stampede took it over the edge. So I'm living proof what happens when you go back too soon without letting your brain heal from the first concussion.
And what were you an athlete doing? What was your sport?
I was a bull rider in the rodeos.
Got it. So already that's a pretty tough sport anyway. And so you mix in a couple of extra falls off your bowl and then actually landing on its head a couple of times. So that was
Well,
20 years ago almost, right?
and the day of my accident, I lost my balance and my head smashed the bull's head twice. And then I went on to spend a week short of a year in therapy, learning how to walk, talk, and regain the use of my left arm.
That's amazing. And that battle still goes on, correct? I mean,
Yeah.
it's every day. All right. And Christina.
Well, I started out, I was a pioneer for women's bobsleigh, and there were, of course, it was a male-dominated sport, and I was introduced to the sport, and to make a long story short, when I went down the first time as a brakeman, I thought, no way, I need to put the driving in my hands and have control over my life, kind of thing.
Right.
But it was more so the excitement of pioneering something, for women, getting women involved around the world into this sport that was really full of adrenaline, risk taking, extreme. And I thought anything that scares me, and it's really about stepping into courage to do it, that really excited me. And so I was very much, somebody that saw the vision of leadership and of developing something new for women, and to just add an extra International Olympic Committee sport to the roster of Olympic game events in the winter.
But how did you so what led to was it a cumulative effect in your case, or was it a singular injury? What happened?
Myself, I had never been diagnosed with a concussion, and which really boggles people, because there's this view of what a concussion, you need to be knocked out. But in my case, I actually had crashes, just learning the sport, also pushing it to the limits. And you crash, I broke my nose. They focused more on my nose than on my noodle. And they looked at, once I remember I didn't crash, I almost did. And I felt a bell go off, very temporary, but it was just like I recall it. And then I was just thankful I hadn't crashed, and nobody noticed. I even had an upset, so just these little micro concussions or micro vibrations, especially me being a dynamic, a very aerodynamic seated athlete in my bobsleigh, I had like the repetitive kind of movements side to side. I had paint chips removed from my helmet, or scratched visor, just from that repetitive motion. So it's a very aggressive sport. And if anything, that was the start of really adding to the injuries inside my skull.
Jeez. I mean, that's the thing, is that I think most people think, gee, it must be one impact, a little bit like what Curtis went through. But it's also the repetitive, whether it's your sport, or if it's playing hockey and getting hit several times, or football at home, football being repetitive like that. It can happen a wide variety of ways. And so batter up, Clint. You're batting third here.
Well, I'm just the guy sitting here with a bullet lodged in his head.
Well, that's fairly common, but tell me something. No.
That is true, though.
Well, yeah. But we're going to talk about what led to that. But going backwards, tell me a little bit about, I mean, you're just, by the nature of a lot of the work you've done and the sport you played, I'm sure that you rattled off a series of them. And when you played hockey, there was no, I mean, there wasn't too much diagnosis of concussions and that sort of thing, was there?
No, you got your bell rung was the modern or the most common term. You got your bell rung. Take a breath or two, and you'll be fine. Yeah, I think I can relate to Christina. I've had I saw this thing on Facebook, and I think it's on my timeline, but it's my last NHL game, and it's like a 5-minute clip. And if you watch it, you can see Clint Malarchuk getting concussed at least 3 times in that game. They were running over me.
And was it something where it was pretty well known in the hockey community that you could kind of, I mean, that was a good way to get somebody kind of out of the game, or? out for a
Go back.
while? Or,
Yeah, it's a lot different now. I mean, there's not as much fighting. The rules have really changed, and that's why I say if you watch that clip, you're going to go, "Oh my God, these guys were barbaric back then." But I guess we were. The rules were different, and fighting was really prevalent. And if a fan went to a game and didn't see at least 3 fights, it was probably a disappointment.
yeah, it sure has changed quite a bit. Now, in your case, Clint, you were raised in Alberta, and you were raised on. I mean, you've been riding horses most of your life. Have you suffered some injuries from that?
Not riding. I've been very fortunate that way. And I look back because when I was playing in the NHL, I was rodeoing in the summer. And, we weren't allowed to snow ski. It was in our contract. But I thought, well, there's no rodeo clause in there. So I got away with that. And I actually got caught. But anyways, no, I've been dinged actually quite a bit. I'm an equine dentist as well and chiropractor. So I've been nailed a couple times hitting a horse brings his head up and I'm kind of over working on his teeth. And I sent you a picture. I don't know. It was probably a year ago where my face is pretty, it looked like, it looked like Curtis.
Yeah, you lost a couple rounds to Mike Tyson on that one.
Yeah, I know.
That's so with all that said,
didn't say me. No, okay.
What's that?
Well, everybody should know. Everybody should know Curtis is a buddy of mine, and in our game, we're ruthless, gallows humor.
Yes. Well, so Curtis, tell me a little bit about when you said you spent that first year, almost a full year, in the hospital and recovery and so forth, but tell me a little bit about the journey since that time, and what are some of the things that you've had to relearn that we all take for granted?
Well, I mean, for the first 13 years, I kept the list. And for one of the things, I mean, this might take you a few seconds, but it took me 10 years before I could touch each finger to my thumb on my left hand. And it was like being a baby again at 27. My whole slate was wiped clean. And just every single thing. I mean, it took me 8 years before I could use that left railing to go up the stairs again. And just, I guess, it's a whole brand new world. You have to learn everything all over again.
And what's incredible is that we all think that, again, I not only taking for granted, but we would almost think, gee, just put your arm up there. What takes so long? And I think what few people realize is that it's not just a question of the muscles in the left arm, but it's the connecting the muscles to the brain, that everything has to go in sync, right?
Here, I'll show you guys.
Yeah.
The pinky one can be a little stubborn sometimes.
Now, so there's that.
What's that?
How do you pick your nose?
Right hand.
Right. Okay. Well, Curtis, you told me too. You couldn't speak, right? You had to use a whiteboard, right?
Yeah, like in the beginning, I had to write everything down in a scribbler to communicate, and then I put vowels into words and words into sentences. And in the beginning, I was unable to move my left arm, and then with walking in the beginning, it took me 2 nurses to get me out of bed. And then when I went to physiotherapy, the therapist walked alongside me for an hour a day, teaching me how to walk step by step. And it'd be your cane, left foot, and then right. And then there would be an assistant walk behind me with a chair so I could move once in a while, or so I could take a break once in a while. And then last year on May 30th, I walked 19.8 miles. And with my speech, I put vowels into words and words into sentences. So it's been a haul.
And what's interesting, Curtis, is that I think that people think, again, that you suffered a an injury to your spine or something else that would prevent you from walking, and they don't realize again that this was all because of what happened to your brain.
Yeah, and I was on the Glasgow Coma scale. It starts at 15 and goes down to 3, and I was the 3, so I was an extremely severe traumatic brain injury survivor.
That's incredible. So going forward, what are some of the things that you're even doing today and continuing to do to continue to that recovery?
Well, I'm skating again, but a couple years ago, I wanted to ride a bike across Canada, and I just kept track of the miles on the calendar. But beginning, it took 30 or 2 hours to go 30 miles, and then in August, 3 miles in 7 seconds. So I'm always, working on getting better. And a lot of people tell me speech is still getting more clear.
That's great. That's fantastic. Thanks for that story. And Curtis, we're going to loop back to you in a second. Christina, tell me a little bit in your situation. What are some of the symptoms that you have experienced and are still experiencing, and how are you trying to get past some of those?
Well, when I first actually picked up on something was when I was 30, and I recall not being able to remember what I had done that morning. And I thought, well, I was really struggling. I was just lost, as if come on, and then when that just kept happening, at various times, I was starting to say, you know what, you pay attention to this, because this could be early Alzheimer's, early onset. And I just kept it to myself. But then, again, we don't realize that all these different symptoms, which I will share with you, all are due to this hard drive. And a lot of these symptoms are, affect our character. So these character deteriorations of, with our character deteriorates with these additions of symptoms. So lack of focus. Well, I was so focused, I was over focused as a bobslayer. I mean, attention to detail, I was just all over that. And all of a sudden, when I'd forget things or, things like that, I couldn't, short-term, long-term memory, couldn't even have a dream. I mean, I never dreamt for at least 15 years until I had started therapy, which I can explain to you later. But also anxiety. That was a weird feeling for me, because I really wasn't an anxious person. And I mean, yes, we risk ourselves in our sport and put our lives on the line, but we accept that. That's what drives us. That's what excites us. And to think that now you're starting to get anxious about something you've been doing for years it was boggling. Especially having fear to do, doing it was another crazy emotion that I was experiencing. And then it just kind of other things started to show themselves, because of course, once you retire, you get invited to different events and you start socializing, networking, going in, representing yourself as an Olympian to support other fundraisers and such. And I was introducing myself to various people in the room, and then, which I love. That's such a highlight for me. And then all of a sudden, I was reintroducing myself to some of the same people at the same event, at the same night. And of course, they say, "Oh, we've already met this evening." And then I kind of chuckle and, "Oh, I'm so embarrassed. I'm sorry," and not to make them feel like they were memorable, but I really I was like, "Geez, pay attention, Christina." And then I actually met them again at another event, didn't recognize them, reintroduced myself. Well, by the third event, I remember the woman say, she said, "We met." And then she walked away, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." So it the feeling, my heart just sunk, because I recognized that, oh my gosh, something's going on. And just, depression, of course, they contribute to that. Often, transition out of your sport, you're out of the limelight, you need redirection. I mean, I was getting all these different opportunities for jobs and different things. And And it was like I was anxious to get out of bed. It was like this fear. And it was really, really disturbing, to be honest.
So give me an idea of what's helping you bridge that today.
It started out, actually, I was invited to a brain injury event of all things. I went as an Olympian to support the event.
Hmm.
And lo and behold, the doctor got up on stage and started addressing the crowd and said, you may not realize it, but you may have a head injury. And she started labeling off all the symptoms, which I started to check off the boxes. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's me. And so I went up to her and I said, we need to talk. And she spoke about a thing called QEEG. And Dr. Tracy Thompson has a clinic that actually helps brain health. And she goes through all the dietary and you name it, everything about brain health. There's so many avenues that you can improve your brain health: meditation, nutrition, exercise, hydration. I can go on. But the big thing was the turning point of QEEG. And I actually received that with the diagnosis that every area that I had issues around were actually the areas that had those symptoms pertaining to, the areas that were damaged. And it was so fascinating. And I cried, because it wasn't out of sadness. It was more, thank goodness, there's something that I can actually say, that's not Christina Smith. It's her hard drive, but it's not the will of Christina that was, that was struggling. It was more so what was functioning to, my wiring wasn't connecting, so it really was a very happy day.
Well, it sounds like it's almost as if, it's so hard when you don't know what's happening to you. And so I'm sure it was, even though on one hand it was maybe hard to hear, on the other hand it was relief that at least you knew something you could put your finger on.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
And I
That's
think
incredible.
after that whole thing, it was about, gosh, I have hope. And hope is really what we hold on to a lot of times. And to me, these beautiful things that you're, featuring at the Win Again Academy, in the Clubroom, is really about educating people about things. And I really think that the advocacy work that Curtis and Clint are doing around this are just so important, because people don't know what they don't know. And
Yeah.
so for myself, I knew, or got introduced to, it's called biofeedback in the QEEG, which is the brain map that they did. And it's a quantitative electroencephalogram, and essentially is a little cap with 19 wires, and it picks up all the brain waves, and it tells you where you're firing, you're not firing, or you're over firing, or under firing. And it's just amazing, because the doctor's was able to say, you must be going through this and this and this and this. And I'm like, how do you know that? He goes, your brain's talking to me. And so a lot of these things, unfortunately, aren't covered by healthcare, and they're in private clinics, which is really a shame, because we're really addressing or putting focus on pharmaceuticals versus proactive or preventative treatments that are very holistic, not drug related, and really trying to get, like, our bodies are amazing things that can heal, and we just need to give them a chance sometimes and have the right guidance with the right people.
Well, Christina, that was fantastic. And it's interesting. I think you're starting to find, and I'm starting to find, that there are more approaches that are more on the holistic side and less, and away from the big pharma and so forth. So I think there's a starting to be a shift towards that. But you're right. I think it's something that the world of sport in general needs to take a much stronger look at, whether it's being able to diagnose concussions at a, sort of even a lighter, if there's such a thing as a light concussion, but a milder concussion, and then addressing it as soon as possible, because you're all showing what can happen if it's not diagnosed or not treated and not addressed to, and it's you've all been through so many challenges. So Clint, there's a lot to sort of unpack and so forth, but tell me a little bit about how some of the combination of the injuries and some other things really led to eventually your abusive behavior to an extent, right? And then what led to eventually your attempt at suicide and so forth.
Well, I look back now, and I just want to say right off the bat, I wonder if I got CTE, and that's what causes, that's well documented in the NFL and the NHL with those players, suicides, substance abuse, the depression and anxiety that these former athletes are forming. And so I sometimes wonder, but then again, I struggled as a kid with my mental illness. But in 1989, I was playing with the Buffalo Sabres, and I caught a skate. It severed my jugular vein, and I almost died right there on the ice. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know anything about trauma. I had no counseling. But that's where my predisposition, I guess I'd say, to mental illness, the anxiety, depression, OCD, just went off the charts. I couldn't leave the house. The OCD was so bad, the panic attacks. I was starting to have nightmares and flashbacks of that skate coming up. And so my mental health really nosedived after that. And adding in more and more concussions, I think it's just a combination of everything. But, going 20 years undiagnosed PTSD, I've almost died 3 times, once on the ice, once a reaction to painkillers, and my heart stopped. And then my 20 years of undiagnosed PTSD, going behind the barn and pulling the trigger. It's kind of a long story, but that's a summation of it, I guess.
Well, the one part of your book, you talk about how you were just drinking so much to almost quiet the voices in your head.
Oh, yeah.
And I
I
think
was
that's,
drinking-
yeah.
I was drinking like 25, 30 beers a day just to get through a day. But, it was American beer, and I'm Canadian. So what's that, 8? So,
Ish.
but no, I was just I was self-medicating. I wasn't partying. I was sitting in my barn right here and drinking and just trying to get through a day and my head, I couldn't turn it off. The OCD, the ruminating thoughts, all those things. And I wasn't sleeping. I still don't sleep well. I mean, I'm an insomnia guy. It's terrible. So I'm going to take guitar lessons on the internet. So when I wake up, I'm going to be more productive.
I could, if you want, I can call you up and read you some of my book, and that'll help put you to sleep if you want.
Your book. I've read your book.
And you're still staying awake. Okay, good. Well, I guess that's a good sign.
Yeah, it is.
No, that's great. So tell me a little bit about what's helping you nowadays.
I have to take medication for my OCD. And I'm very minimal. It's really cut back over the years. So meditation, I meditate, and that mindfulness, trying to stay in the moment and not let my mind start to race. So very mindfulness, trying to stay in the moment. I think that working out I work out every day. And just to in fact, I wake up with anxiety or depression. I don't even know the difference, which is which. And I wake up with it. And if I slept, but I wake up with it. And if I could get that workout in early, I roll pretty good through the day then. Obviously, I do therapy, PTSD. I've been to 2 retreats, and one I'm still in. It's an 18-month deal. And so, yeah, and obviously counseling, therapy, and being a service is huge. Like when this COVID, I'm not out there speaking very much, just starting to pick up again. But that gratification of standing on a stage and having people come up to you and hugging you, and they're in tears and going, "You're my twin. I just haven't told anybody my story." And we all have a story that needs to be told. And just connecting with people like that being of service it's so gratifying for me. And it all started with my book. I can barely read, but yet I wrote a book. And with that, the speaking became part of my life. And I guess my book is, even though I played in the NHL, My greatest accomplishment, I think, is writing my book, because I poured everything out there. And with that, and I didn't know how it'd be perceived, but when you get emails from people saying, "Oh my God, I'm going to get help. I'm going to go see a doctor. You're my twin. I know what you're talking about." I knew there's people out there. I didn't know there's so many Clint Malarchuks out there that really struggle mightily, and we're getting better. We got more and more conversations surrounding mental illness, and more athletes and celebrities are coming out, and that's really helping. I mean, we've come a long way since when I was 1989 getting my neck cut and struggling mightily.
Well, you bring up a great point. I think that's such a big thing to say, that there is more recognition and more conversation. And now we see it almost every day in different sports. There'll be a basketball player starting to chat about it, and baseball players, and football, and so forth. I think that one thing that needs to be acknowledged, and this is something that Eric Kusin and his crew over at Same Here, they like to talk about, and it's true, is that people sometimes say, oh, well, there's every 1 out of 5 people, 20% of people out there have some form of mental health issues, right? But he says, no, it's actually 5 out of 5. All of us have varying degrees of things that we have going on. And
well, Mark, and it's not necessarily mental illness.
right.
A lot of it is emotional distress, especially with COVID. People, for the first time in their lives, are dealing with the uncertainties of employment and losing businesses and all these things, and the isolation and the lack of connection. So a lot of people, they're not mentally ill, but they're experiencing this emotional distress, and which is basically depression, anxiety, all these things that, but they're not mentally ill, but they are going through it. And we all, I think, can relate to that.
100%. I mean, I'll be upfront and say, look, I went through a lot of this past year, because I'm usually a pretty social guy and I like to be around people. And it was pretty challenging being, in my case, in the middle of nowhere for a solid year plus during all this COVID stuff, and trying to avoid humans and that kind of thing. And, I joke with people and I tell them, look, I got excited when I'd see the UPS driver. I'd say, oh my God, there's another human, right? So it's, you're right. It's, I don't think I was ever, quote, mentally ill, but I absolutely, myself, I'll admit, it's been, everybody's gone through a lot. And, but
Mark, get a goldfish.
Oh, don't even start with the fish. I'll get in trouble for that. Don't even, that's a long story for another day, but I've had fish tanks, we don't have one anymore. Anyways, but I know they're good. Clint, wait a minute, you don't have fish. What are you talking about?
I do in my horse trough.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
All right.
In their water tank, and they live through the winter too.
Okay, you didn't show me the fish. All right.
That's how I learned how to fly fish.
Just right in there. Okay. So looping back around, that's awesome, Clint. Looping back around, Curtis, tell me a little bit about, if when you're speaking with people and you're speaking in front of an audience or like this here, what kind of advice can you give, and would you give people if they've gone through any sort of traumatic brain injury? What kind of advice would you give someone as they progress through their recovery?
Well, you don't get better sitting on the couch. And
Perfect. Yeah.
I would tell a survivor that they're on their own journey. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. And patience will be your biggest thing. Don't ever thinking, oh, my recovery isn't going fast enough. You'll recover when you recover. And there's no bigger, most important thing about being a survivor is patience, because when you look back at where you started to where you're at now, there were mountains of difference. And just, well, probably the biggest thing is never give up and make each day count.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're the statue of that. I mean, you've been every day 20 years now. Every day you strive to be better. And I think we can all really learn a lot from that, Curtis. And you know, again, I didn't know you personally before I was seeing some of your videos on social media on LinkedIn. And I was always looking at those saying, God, those are amazing. You know, so inspirational for me to see you climbing stairs. I saw you, you know, skate across the ice that time, a few other things. And I was, you know, amazed. And then here we are. And I'm so happy you're part of this. So Curtis, we're going to loop back around to you again, but thank you for that answer. You're right. You know, it's funny. I think you're right, especially athletes who are accustomed to performance and winning and competitiveness and so forth. We're all anxious to be victorious. We're all anxious to win immediately. It's go, 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 go. And you can't do that when you're recovering from any sort of mental illness, brain injuries, etc. You're right. There's a different timetable, and it's one that is hard to control. So that's great. Thanks, Christina. What tell me a little bit about something you would you know, yours was a cumulative effect, but what are some of the things that you would advise other people to, as they're going through this?
People have to develop empathy. They have to develop the ability to not judge others. Just because certain things are changing or people have emotional, you know, irregular outbursts, or, you know, they're starting to change, or they may become, you know, addicts, or in whether it's alcohol or drugs, or, you know, like there's so many things that could be tied back to a brain injury, you know, and people forget that a simple car accident, that you don't have that, you know, the trauma on the head could actually then be, you know, can follow you the rest of your life, and you never actually associate those symptoms that you're experiencing to that event. And you know, homelessness, they say in studies, you know, 50 to 70% of the homeless weren't actually homeless prior to a brain injury. And you know, and spousal abuse, there's countless studies around, discoveries around where the brain has impacted relationships, divorce, you know. So there's people out there that just need to get educated. And I really, my big focus when I was writing my book, that I didn't want to scare people away and just have it all about, you know, the brain injury and everything, because people don't realize it. I call it the hidden pandemic. And a lot of people look at mental health and brain injuries often as two different things. But I believe that a lot of them are part and parcel. Like that, it's, you know, mental health is a symptom of brain injury. And yes, some people can have mental health issues without the brain injury. But I really think that a lot, in my theory, is that there's something that could have been affected within their life. So to really develop that empathy, and that's where my emotional coaching that I've learned through actually the pandemic has really brought me to a place of realizing that we can just care more and put ourselves in other people's shoes, and stop being, you know, stop judging quickly, you know, to something, because there could be way more things going on, because it is the hidden injury.
That's absolutely right. Thank you. That's great. Clint, obviously a lot of athletes go through concussions, and they have other issues that they come across, but also plenty of non-athletes have the same. Give me a sense of what some of your advice might be.
Well, I just want to first expand on what Christina said on,
Sure.
you know, these athletes, or these, it doesn't have to be athletes, but Todd Ewan, who was an enforcer in the NHL, his wife said, you know, I believe I think he donated his brain and he did have CTE, but his whole personality started to change. He became very aggressive and violent and depressive and all these things. So, my advice is, I like again, hey Christina, I kind of like you. I'm going to say, but empathy and compassion, understanding. And people tend to judge the things that they don't understand.
Mhm.
And this is one of them, because you really can't see it. And I remember when I was in a lockdown facility, there was a lot of homeless people in there, and they were locked down for 72-hour holds like I was, and they just turned them back loose, 72 hours back on the street. And I just think that as a society we need compassion, empathy, and try to understand the things that you haven't been there or lived it, but try. I
Mhm.
think it's important. And I have never had cancer, but God, I don't want it either. But I know people that have, and you see the suffering in that. So these other things like brain injuries and mental illness, they're not you don't see them. It's not like a guy with a broken arm, so it's hard to really put yourself in that spot. But I think that's one thing we've gained by the pandemic, is a lot of people have experienced for the first time in their life what it's like to struggle mentally or emotionally. And I think that if there's a good thing, I guess that would be it.
Mhm.
That's a great point. I want to say each of you are fantastic speakers. You're very sort of you know genuine in your how you feel and what you've all gone through. And I think you should all be everybody should be having you all come speak to their groups. I mean, it's amazing to hear the story, but also the story of recovery and coming out on the other side, and the advice that you're all giving. So I really I think um, anybody out there, please let's go bring them all in for some nice big paying gigs. I mean, I got to throw in big paying.
You can't afford me.
I bet someone can. Hey, I'll call up Jeff Bezos, see what he's doing, and see if he'll fly you onto his yacht. Even he's got issues, I'm sure. But anyway, so Curtis, so in terms of, you said earlier, you can't really push this along or rush this along and so forth. But tell me a little bit about, do you have yourself some personal goals that you'd like to achieve, over the next 3 months, 6 months, year, that sort of a thing?
Well, I guess one, I'd like to get more, like my left arm. That's been the biggest uh, work, to
Mhm.
get more and more use out of my left arm. And like the other night, I went skating, and it was the first time, whatever, 19 and a half years, that I skated around the rink twice without stopping. So, I'll work on that this winter to hopefully, get up to 5 laps around the rink without stopping. And that would be one of the short-term goals, was skate around the rink 5 times, and just to work more and more at, getting stronger and getting healthier. Because I know when I exercise or work out, it makes me feel good, and my brain is getting a lot healthier. And the biggest thing is just every day as a survivor, you have to work towards recovery. I mean, that's my full-time job, and just to keep getting better, bottom line, is my goal.
Well, I mean, it's amazing to see that. I think I'm sure that you will have those 5 laps done pretty quickly by the end of the winter for sure. So, I mean, look, when you tell me, you told me the other day that that you went out for a walk and it was minus a billion degrees outside, and you're just out there wandering around like whatever. You know, most
It's on
people,
the
yeah, wouldn't even stick your nose outside. So it's amazing that you're doing that, Curtis. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, the day I told you that, it was minus 31, and I walked 2 miles in 43 minutes.
True Canadian.
Backwards. Yeah, that is amazing. And Christina, you look, you've become a fantastic and integral part of what we're trying to do and doing here with Win Again and in the club room, and you've been amazing. Such a positive influence on everybody, and also just so genuine, and so you always pour out your heart. So it's always fantastic to see you and hear you speak and so forth. But tell me a little bit about what's coming up for you in the next few months. Drum roll, please.
Well, I definitely, when I first met Curtis, he asked me out on a date to go skating. So that's one goal that we're gonna do, right, Curtis?
Yep.
So he's like, when I come up there, will you go out skating with me? And I was like, absolutely. And the next thing you also asked is if I could teach you skiing with my dad. We're both ski instructors. So those are two goals. And yes, I would say they're also personal, just because you have been supportive to me in the short time I've known you, and so uplifting for little challenges that only the brain injured can know about. So it's really a true pleasure. As well, I have my book coming out, and would really love. It would be great support to see people if they ever are interested in pre-registering. Shameless plug. And of course, lots of speaking. I would love that. It would just be so delightful to share this. And I really work from the greater good. It's not about Christina Smith. It's about everything that I can make a difference, and helping others. So that's really the part of this. And I really resonate very well with Clint and Curtis about that, and just you really heart focused. So yeah, and also you, Mark. I mean, honestly, I'm with 3 stand-up gentlemen right now, and really feel honored.
Thank you, Christina. That's nice. And you'll have to let us know how the date goes with Curtis. Curtis, be a gentleman, okay?
Yeah.
Anyway, and Clint, what do you got coming up other than more equine dentistry?
Well, I'm getting more and more bookings with the COVID kind of comment. Well, it's all over the place, but it's actually starting to pick up a little bit. So that really keeps me going. I love to get out there and speak, and like Christine, I bring up my book, and I don't do that to promote my book, but if you haven't bought it, you should.
Oh, you're not just mailing copies out? Come on.
Oh yeah, I do. But I guess my main goal would be to learn to skate.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
great. You can come with us. We'll all hold hands.
12 years in the NHL and I couldn't skate.
Oh, come on. Well, you knew how to stop a puck.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that was
Hope it hits you.
something like that. Well, all of you have been fantastic. And look, the best way, I'm assuming the best way or a great way to reach all of you is via your LinkedIn. You're all on there and on social media. But I encourage everybody here to get a hold of Curtis and of Christina and Clint and have conversations. I mean, that's something that's so important, is just to let it out a little bit. And they all have their unique experiences, but they all have fantastic guidance and advice. And I truly appreciate each of you being on here and sort of bearing your souls and sharing your experiences and being willing to do that. And it's clear to me that, and I hope everybody here watching and listening can think about who they could introduce you to that could really be impacted by this, and obviously bring you in to speak and that sort of thing too. But Christina, good luck with the book. I think it's going to be fantastic. And it's an incredible feeling to have published a book. And it's your legacy. So that's congratulations on that. Clint, I already told you I love your book. I'm not going to suck up anymore. But congrats on yours. And look, when people read your book, they see everything that you've gone through, and it's really quite incredible, and that you're still here. And we're all happy you're still here. I'm sorry.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Oh, my pleasure. And then Curtis, keep on rocking, man. I think we're all really inspired by everything that you've done and continue to do. And I'm thrilled that you've been here with us. So thanks so much.
And if anybody wants to reach out to me one-on-one and either share their story with me or have any questions that you want to ask one-on-one, please reach out to me on LinkedIn and we can share our stories.
Thanks all of you guys. And now we're going to have a wonderful evening, but please stick around. We're going to go back to the tables and sort of chat with some more folks. There's definitely some people I want to introduce you to if you haven't met them already that I think each of you should get to know. So thanks again for being here, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
I got to
Mark,
yes, sir.
When I first started writing things in my journal, it was to be a speaker, teach people, and help others. And I'd just like to thank you for giving me a big stage to share my story with the Win Again Academy and whoever else is listening. Thank you.
Thanks for the kind words, Chris. Thank you. And